Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to the event. We have a wonderful panel, and I would like to introduce everyone. My name is Balaji Damodaran. I would be the MC for this event and want to learn more about the GenAI space as you all. So let's welcome Surbhi Rathore, who's the CEO and co-founder of Symbl.ai, building state-of-the-art GenAI for communication data. On the list is next Kamelia Aryafar, a senior engineering director in cloud AI, overseeing teams building Gen search and recommendations AI solutions. Then Shingai Manjengwa is the head of AI education at ChainML, where she works with clients on AI education, adoption, and implementation. And Manas Bhuyan, a distinguished AI and data leader in Deloitte Strategy and Analytics practice, specialized in accelerating digital transformation journey in retail and consumer product sector. Let's all put together a round of applause for the team here.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Laila Paszti, and I have the pleasure of moderating the session on generative AI, use cases, and ROI in industry verticals. Before I start off by allowing the panelists to briefly introduce themselves, I just want to mention that any opinions or any thoughts that they share are theirs personally, and they don't not representative of the industries or the organizations that they work for. So, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Hello. Hello. No. Okay.
No, it's on. I think it's now.
No, it's working. Okay. Hi, this is Manas Bhuyan. I'm a data and AI practitioner, practice lead for our retail and consumer sector practice. And I'm based out of Austin office, Deloitte's Austin office. And primarily I help I give advisory services to our esteemed clientele on doing data and platform modernization. And then how do you generate business value out of your, be it cloud or data or AI/ML or any next gen technology. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Kamelia Aryafar. I'm a senior engineering director with Google Cloud AI. And our team works on building a lot of GenAI application and foundation models. The teams that I lead primarily focus on building search recommendations and personalization solutions, a lot of them augmented with GenAI. Or direct applications of GenAI. So super happy to be here. Before that, I had a background. I was at Overstock, and before that, Etsy, so a little bit of retail mixed with AI.
Hey everyone, I'm Surbhi. I'm the CEO co-founder of a company called Symbl.ai. We guys are a purpose-built AI platform to understand and transform unstructured conversation data. So if you're building a product with tons of audio, video, communication data like emails, chats, you would use us as APIs or models itself and integrate that into your products to generate insights and knowledge. Been around for 5 years and really excited to be here.
Hello everyone, my name is Shingai and I lead AI education at ChainML. We've developed an open source platform called Council AI that uses agents and chains for various tasks to advance your prompting. In addition to that, we're focusing on self-service analytics. So the idea that you can ask a question in natural language, large language models do the heavy lifting, code generation, etc., and the user gets back a response in natural language. I've been in the industry since 2007. I started my career in retail analytics. I've had a startup myself, and now been with ChainML with a couple of Vector Institute alumni.
Great, thank you. So I think, like most of us, when ChatGPT was launched as a web application in November of 2022, we all wanted to know how is it going to be leveraged by industry. And I think the panel that we've assembled here are the best to guide us. So without further ado, can you let us know, Manas, where do you see the promise of generative AI coming to the forefront? And can you tell us about any unexpected use cases that you've seen as well?
Yeah, so like there are two questions. Like first, in the industry segment where we are seeing the real use cases and then unexpected part. I'll first handle the first one. So when we are talking about the GenAI, not the entire spectrum of AI/ML, then primarily the use cases are around customer service, customer operations improvement, then you have your product development and your marketing and sales. These are the primary functions in any across industry or businesses. You can use them. And within those business functions, then you need to figure out like a key part of GenAI is like personal assistance, where you are getting the real productivity boost, be it like coding or be it generating a new content. So within that function, you need to figure out like what's your entire journey for the customer, like end user, and then try to see which part can be automated or done really well by the generative AI.
Thank you. Kamelia?
Thank you.
Yep. So I actually think GenAI is not really that different from classic AI, in the sense that I think it's best to be included in all the applications, and I think the industries and different teams can take advantage of it in the existing applications by just adding it to whatever application it may be. So if you look at Google, for example, like search has been, like one of the foundations of things that we build, and as an enterprise solution in the cloud too. So if you add GenAI to it, it just takes it to the next level, right? It's not like you're building new things. Of course, there are a lot of new applications that was maybe the most, not unexpected, but the most delightful to me was applications that are built for developer productivity, things like, automatic coding and the Copilot and stuff like that. I think is super helpful. And very delightful to see that. But I think for all industries, for them to be really able to see benefit in production from GenAI, what makes sense is look at where they're currently using AI and see how they can augment it and take it even further with GenAI. So that's at least the way I think about it.
Yeah, our experience has been more working with product teams and engineering teams that are actually adopting these new models and trying to fuse it into communication data in their products. So we work mainly with organizations that have products that are building on top of Zoom or taking call recordings or sending emails, and that's a big part of their workflow. So even before LLMs came about, a lot of AI was being used to identify intent and sentiments and transcribe the calls. And really, like to your point, LLMs enable the extension of that and depth of some use cases, which was not possible before. So like summarization of calls is such a great use case for that. Like you could still summarize calls before, but the 20,000 different ways in which you can do that now is potentially much more personalized to every user that is receiving it. So yeah, a lot of the stuff that we do is around calls and video meetings and all of that stuff. So meeting notes, searching through conversation data, enabling personalized automation of workflows, all of that stuff.
That's great. Shingai?
If I can add, most of it has been covered, but what GenAI does, especially for the language models, is that it unlocks data sets that we may not have been looking at before. So something like clinician notes in a hospital context, there's a client, a company, a startup called Hero AI by Dr. Devon Singh, and he's looking at how to reduce wait times in hospital ERs. He leads AI at the Hospital for Sick Kids in Toronto. So the idea that you can start looking at clinician notes and inputting them as another data point in addition to all the other metrics that you would have been using is something that LLMs unlock that previously might have been really difficult to do, and we might have chosen to look at other data sets before that.
Well, thank you. That was really helpful and really provides a nice insight into how companies are leveraging AI. And, I think perhaps maybe the discussion has not been really representative because you're working with a set of stellar use cases. But what we've seen is that, if we were to poll industries, many companies are really leveraging generative AI internally. and there appears to be some sort of barrier to bringing those applications to production. So what do you see as the issues to scale up, and how can companies overcome those issues? And maybe we'll start off with Shingai on this time.
Well, just piggybacking off that previous example, if you're in a highly regulated industry like healthcare, like the financial sector, then those are industries that will struggle to use generative AI to the extent that others might, right? The idea that failing fast is not an option in a healthcare setting. So, that is one lever that I would say is a barrier. In addition to that, and my colleagues will also provide some input here, from an education context, you might also say that companies that aren't ready to receive AI. So if you don't have that literacy base in your organization where your organization can leverage AI, or if you don't have the skill sets at a more senior or at the top of the pyramid where the folks can deploy it responsibly, then that's also a barrier for adoption.
That's great. Surbhi?
I think many product teams and product builders are doing a two-way process at this point. One is they're experimenting with different use cases that comes about. So they're testing out that let us do several POCs and find out and understand what is our evaluation paradigm based on the data that we have, based on the customers. How can we do we put humans in loop? Do we put some guardrails? How do we implement that? And then also, what is our infrastructure in terms of building redundancy in the models as well? So there's a lot of work that has to be done outside of actually using the language model to make the application of generative AI scale to different customers and personas and products. So I feel like we're at a point in time, and maybe next year we'll see this change pretty drastically, where we're all trying to figure out the surrounding infrastructure outside the LLMs, and also finding out what's the best LLM for what data, and let me build my own evaluation frameworks internally, at least with the product teams that we work with, in addition to, of course, scaling the team and making sure that even customers' understanding of what Gen AI use cases are valuable is still kind of on the gray zone right now. So before you put anything in the product, either it's experimentation, alpha, beta, or it's really, the ROI in your product experience. So I think that's kind of where we are.
Well, that's a really nice summary of both, issues that are unique to generative AI, and then, some of those that we see across AI adoption as a whole. Camelia, do you have any thoughts on that you can share?
+1 to everything I heard. I think those are really solid, great points. I think the way I look at it, there are 4 different aspects for industries and how they can get AI and Gen AI in specific faster and better in production, and some of the barriers to enter. I think the first one is, like you mentioned, the choice of the application and the POC that you do. What is the most important thing for you to focus on so you can get the benefit and the ROI there, exactly as you said. I think the second one is the choice of the foundational model. What foundational model are you going to use? Because most companies are not going to build that in-house, right? So they're going to use a model from hyperscalers, either open source or some of the the other companies. So that's another area that what you choose matters, right? And then the third one is having the culture of experiment-driven development, which I think is a departure for a lot of companies, because as we know, Gen AI and AI development in general is different than classic, software development. So having that mindset of sticking with it, continue iterating, and having a framework to eval experimentation and getting things in production once they actually show value, I think that's important. And then finally, and the last one, which I think is also very important, is scaling what you have, right? A lot of Gen AI right now is very much scratching the surface. Once you ramp that up to, billions of users or, a lot of documents and all of that, that becomes a whole different game for your system to be reliable, responsive, meet your SLOs, all of those things. So that's the last step of it that I think it's going to be a barrier, but hopefully solvable.
And do you...
Yeah, actually, those are really great points, and probably you summarized it really well, all the 4 points. Just additionally, another one point I'll add, all the industry are there in different maturity level in terms of their data and platform. If you talk about TMT, they are ahead in the curve. But if you go to some other industries, still they are using your white paper. On the pen and paper, they write there how the production systems run, how the factories run. I have visited those organizations, and they're like way, like you can say, in the dark ages. So point is, like, if you want to go into that GenAI space, before that you need to sort out your data and platform modernization piece. And if you have not done that, then to go into that GenAI space, it's very tough. You are just jumping onto the 3.0 version without doing 1.0. So we are seeing like lots of great use cases, and lots of organizations are ahead in the journey from the TMT sector. But there are some other sectors they are not ready yet. Maybe they will take another 2 years just to reach there.
Well, thank you. That was really helpful. I guess one of the things, understanding there are, this is not easily, adoptable or adaptable within organizations, within industries. Do you have any thoughts on how organizations, understanding where they fit in, whether they're in a regulated industry or not, depending on their state of maturity from an IT perspective, depending on whether they have the necessary resources and capital, how do they go about identifying opportunities where they can, develop and deploy AI use cases? I guess.
Oh, for me, okay. Like we always recommend for anyone, for any new technology, you should always try to, some of my panelists also mentioned that, value-driven approach. So if you're trying to do any business, like trying to find a resolution for any business solution or something, so what's the end goal of it? It should not, the technology should not be the driver for it, rather for a particular business function or a particular industry issue, you should try to find the solution using multiple technology, and GenAI can be one of them. And the way we see GenAI, for example, when we are using value-driven framework, what are the things that GenAI is very good at? Doing some repetitive tasks where they can do, if you use that technology, then it can do 30 to 40% of your work within seconds. And then some of the creative work also GenAI is very good at. If you come up with 10 ideas, rather than you brainstorming for 30 minutes, it will give you instantly. So on your entire business problem, try to find out what are the repetitive tasks, what are the generative tasks, and then other tasks, maybe GenAI is not that good, but that's where I think your point was, try to figure out where that personal productivity can come into the play. Maybe it's Copilot, or maybe it code assistants, or maybe it assistant in the form of writing your documents or specs. So that's the lens that we try to recommend before choosing the technology.
That's great. Those are really great points.
Yeah, plus one. I think there are a few companies who are the hyperscalers or maybe startups that are focused on building, foundational models, right? That they work at the core of GenAI and developing those models. So let's set them aside because most companies are not in this bucket, right? Then I think for the majority of the other companies, and in various industries, regulated or not, there are two ways to think about it. One is if you're going to build a new application, then I would think strongly that it's easier to go with a service provider or some solution out there, right? Because you don't want to spend so much time and effort building something from the ground up without validating the use case and the business case. I think if you don't want to build something new, which I think is to me, I think I would advise the teams to focus on existing applications and see if they can get even more benefit from it from the GenAI. So I think one of the fellow panelists mentioned healthcare and summarization in healthcare. I think that's a great example. Mm-hmm. For a lot of companies, they already have teams that are focused on some of these applications, solving it with regular software development or classic AI. Maybe they can now look at, the incremental step that, hey, maybe we should look into summarization and do that first before going into a whole new area. And if they do, then I would strongly recommend to go with a service provider in that sense. So that's roughly how I think about it.
That's a great idea, and I particularly love the example of healthcare because I think there is so many opportunities there. And then when we think about a regulated industry where there's all the sensitive data, having the ability to farm some of that off to a machine rather than a person really does mitigate some of that risk in that regard. Surbhi?
Yeah. Well, given that we are building a platform for communication data, most of our work is usually around that communication-centric workloads. And I think most organizations and products have tons of audio recordings and data lying around that is not used or used inefficiently. And we've been driving on this mission to really unlock the potential of that data. So with that, we actually categorize kind of like 4 pillars of application. One is augmentation. So wherever humans are already working and speaking and talking and writing emails, like how can you use weather AI or language models to kind of like augment them in their workflows? But they're still human in loop. They're still, you're just making them better. Second one is around automation. There are definitely workflows that can be now fully automated. Like let's say you finish your sales calls and now you want to enter CRM notes. Like none of the salespeople should really go and spend time in actually doing CRM data entries. They should spend more time selling. And so all that workflows can actually be automated very easily. So it's a very low-hanging kind of use case. Third one is around, I would say, search, because the time that it takes for you to search the right answer and information, that can be massively reduced with the use of generative AI. So in all applications, whether it is searching through historic data, current data, fusing multiple forms of data together and creating a consensus out of that, all that stuff. And then the fourth one is really analytics, because analytics comes in several forms. It can be predictive, it can be passively recommended analytics, it can be just analyzing information in single one, deep diving into it, or multiple together. So like those are, I would say, like on a very high level, 4 different pillars of how people are using in conversations as we are looking at it.
So I'm excited to hear from Shingai because I know she's going to add a bit of a different twist to this. So we've spoken about where, certain tasks that you can identify, and I think the panel has provided you with a gamut like augmentation, repetition, generative tasks. And so I'm going to turn it over to Shingai to kind of wrap it up and put the bow on top of that.
Okay, so the bow is I have to plug my keynote that's happening later where I spend a lot more time discussing this, but essentially start with the objective functions of the organization. So it's not, as you said, technology for technology's sake. If you start with the problems you were trying to solve before AI, because those were really going to drive your bottom line, then the question becomes how can AI then assist you in solving those problems? So all of the use cases that you suggested, check that box, and that's the litmus test. So, the talk that I'm doing is designed for business leaders so that they can really align the key performance indicators with what the AI is going to do. But I think it's also important for the practitioners, the engineers, because more and more people are coming to you and saying, I want this AI tool, I want a bot that does that. But you need to be able to get your C-suite people to articulate, okay, what are we trying to maximize with this? And answers like, oh, we're trying to maximize customer happiness. You have to push back and say, well, what's the metric for that? And then once we have that metric, we know that we can go and apply artificial intelligence tools, specifically generative AI tools, to advance that objective function. That's the bow.
That's fantastic, because I think, that's a real way of tracking what your ROI is on all of these projects and sort of providing focus on how you, sort of leverage generative AI within the organization. So we have 3 minutes, and I wanted to just ask one wrap-up question from the panelists and then turn it over to the audience for any questions that you may have. So I think what I'll ask you is, what trends do you anticipate in the field of generative AI in 2023, and how might those affect, impact different industries? Was that? I don't have to put you on the spot. I can go with Surbhi this time.
I can kick off. I can kick off. So we've been interested in the idea of agents, and many of you have started to look at that, and the idea that you can really do your prompt engineering in neat ways that allow you additional control flow. So at runtime, if you want to add an agent that does fact-checking, if you want to add an agent that does redaction, then that gives you options. So the idea of using agents with your large language models is interesting to us. And then, as I mentioned, self-service analytics, where you can literally speak to your data, is also an area that we think is going to grow.
Yeah, that's great. I'm a little biased because I'm building a company around it. I feel like before we go on to using one general model to solve all problems in the company or outside, there will be a suite of specialized models that businesses will use based on the data and the workflows that they're adopting. And ultimately, every company will build like an internal model to data sort of a framework and they might even in real time use the right model for the right data and have a workflow, have an evaluation around it into which model performs the best, and based on that it'll be used. So yeah, I think mapping the right model to the data is super critical, and I feel like we'll see a lot of that come out now.
Yeah.
I love that point. I think the domain-specific models are going to be a huge emphasis and trend for various industries and companies and applications. I think the other trend that I see across the board and in different products is going to be emphasis on productivity, being the example of agents, for example, and new applications that are spun up via GenAI to improve productivity or internal developer productivity, like I said. I think those are going to be huge areas of emphasis. And maybe like one great example that you brought up before is also search, like improving search and search technologies with this summarization and being better in terms of personalization and actually like finding all the data and all of that, even in a conversational context. I think that's going to be a huge trend and it's going to help with productivity.
Okay. Overall trend standpoint, I feel, because we have seen this like any technology, initially there is like a lot of euphoria around it. Many organizations would come and build some small accelerators, tools, frameworks. Then in 2 to 3 years, industry gonna converge. There are like 3-4 major players who are gonna build you the entire spectrum of tech stack. And we have seen that in cloud space. Before big data, Hadoop was there, then everything got translated to cloud, and yeah, Kamelia is here. So like Google, Microsoft, we know all the 3 or 4 major players. So we think in next 24 or 36 months, as the tech matures, those organizations are going to build the entire spectrum of end-to-end journey for your GenAI capability, and industry would converge around that.
So I think we have we have time for maybe one quick question. Does anyone have a question? Yes.
Have you seen any offerings that help specific roles develop prompts to become aware of what they can, when a specific role is trying to become more efficient, like an accountant or a lawyer? Have you seen a product that helps that role build the prompt that would help them with their challenge of the minute?
The short answer is yes. I mean, there are different open source platforms and projects that are using agents and chains. But I can reference different ones, but specifically the one that we've built, you would have to sit down and do some engineering process to develop the skills. And if the individual who's the accountant isn't able to do that, then maybe they could approach a company like ours and we could assist them to build the skills and the chains required to have the agent perform a function in a specific domain.
I would also add on to that, like there is some open source work to that, but like she mentioned, I think there is a lot of development involved in that. So prompt tuning is going to still require some work to then use the prompt to actually get benefit from that for that specific role. So we do it internally, like within our applications, right? But most of the solutions we have are end-to-end, like kind of like abstracted away. But there are some open source tools to look into. I think you can check that.
I saw one hand up. Would you? Yep.
I can probably yell. Can you hear me? Yeah. Going back to the future vision of using these generative AI products and solutions. I operate in the industrial manufacturing space. So my question is simply this: how do you see Gen AI converging with autonomous agents for the future?
Surbhi, Manas?
Happy to. I mean, autonomous agents are really like an application of the underlying technology, right? Like, what do you want the agent to do? To reason, to do some scheduling, to understand your tasks which are critical. So I would say that the reasoning piece, the automation piece, the augmentation piece, everything that we just talked about in terms of use cases, agents is just more like an interaction paradigm rather than like the generative AI forefront. So yeah, underlying, they would use generative AI, LLMs, embeddings, everything. But ultimately, I would say that it is the best form that we all look forward to, autonomous agents, so that we don't have to do the repetitive work and everything can be automated. So yeah, we're excited about that, and I'm sure so many companies are working on those.
Can I take autonomous agent? It seems like very futuristic at this stage, given where we are with GenAI technology. Recently, I was going through some study, like Harvard study. The best prompt right now, take a deep breath and then help me do this step by step. If that's where our GenAI technology is, and all the inventors or all the deep industry experts, they are saying we don't know where this GenAI, how it behaves this way. So until our experts are not very, some experts are really cheerleaders, but there are many people who are on the fence, just trying to see where it's going. And until we have common understanding, where this technology really how it behaves and what's the best, without hallucination and all that problems, how we can use it. Until then, autonomous agent is way in future. But I don't know, maybe next 6 months down the line, someone might come up like OpenAI and then create a tool which is really open. I don't know, but that's my...
Yeah, you should check out a company called Imbue, IMBUE. I think they just did a demo around it. Might be interesting.
Okay. Well,
Yeah. We just have one last question from here.
Hi, sorry. I'm in the healthcare space, a data scientist. So real quick, hypothetically, if you're thinking of building a Gen AI team or expanding one at an average mid-sized company, what are the types of profiles should you consider, or what should that team makeup look like? Thank you.
I can take a stab at that. I think that the general profile or the majority of the team could be general software engineers, because I think one of the good things that happened with GenAI is a lot of it is democratized, right? I would emphasize some folks with more of the infra ops background, because I think when you want to have a lot of, compliance type of things and, scaling all of that, I think a SWE could actually solve a lot of the problems, and maybe you would need a few, AI specialists. But I think the landscape has changed. Previously, it was you need a lot of AI specialists, and maybe a few software developers. But I think that is more balanced, though.
I'll just add one quick one, which is a role like solution engineering is becoming more and more important, where you have that bridge between the AI experts, the machine learning scientists and researchers, and what industry needs and what the end customer is going to need. So whatever you end up calling it, it's that translation piece has come back and is now even more important because the artificial intelligence tools are so much more sophisticated than even the traditional analytics tools that we were using before.
Yeah, totally. +1 on that, 100%.
And I just add one thing. I'm not sure if you were asking your question totally in terms of development, but someone with experience working in the HIPAA space, because the regulation does impose a number of technical obligations you may want to consider as well.
Cool. Fantastic. Thank you for your great questions, and thank you, speakers, for providing your valuable insights. It really helped us. And please put together a round of applause for the speakers. And thanks, everyone, for your time today. It's time to break up for lunch. Thanks.